Aloha, and welcome to another episode of Maunalua Past, Present, Future. Thank you for watching this episode. My name is Kendrick Chang, Youth Advisor for Livable Hawaii Kai Hui, and today's episode is on the Scenic Byway Management Plan for the Maunalua-Makapuʻu Scenic Byway. And joining me today are two individuals, one a professional, Gabby, from Townscape, and another familiar face in the Maunalua community, Jaxon. Thank you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Yes, and starting with Gabby, you're coming from a professional side in this process and creating a management plan. So why don't you share to everyone here a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Gabriel Sham. I'm a planner with Townscape, a local planning company based in downtown Honolulu. And our company really takes a holistic approach to planning. So we're not just looking at natural resource management, but also working with the community and developing plans that really meet their desires and needs.
All right, holistic. And in art, we got Carol, who probably brings a holistic approach in terms of knowledge and involvement in the Maunalua area. So, I mean, you've been part of our community.
Yes, thank you. I moved to Maunalua in the early 90s, and I'm now on the Hawaii Kai Neighborhood Board, and I'm the race director for the Kaiwi Coast Run and Walk, which takes place every year and encompasses part of the Scenic Byway.
All right, and then just backing up, as actually this has been several years in the making, starting back in 2012, and just getting the Scenic Byway designation from Makapu'u all the way to Maunalua. So I wanted to ask both of you, maybe let's just start with Carol as far as how did we get to this point?
Well, we got to this point because Greg Knudsen saw this program, which is a state program, and he was part of the Hawaii Kai Neighborhood Board. So he started the process, and the whole purpose of it was to put an emphasis on protecting and preserving the Kaiwi Coast. And so it's a last undeveloped stretch of land along East Oahu.
And then for those who are not familiar with this area, we do have some photos on the screen, if we can bring that up for you. As actually, it is like a couple miles stretch, I mean, everyone might know one, like Hanauma Bay or Sandy Beach. Everyone knows Highlands, but all together, it really encompasses the entire southeastern tip of Oahu.
Yes, the Scenic Byway, which is now designated, it runs from Hawaii Kai Drive at the entrance to Hawaii Kai all the way to Makai Pier in Waimanalo.
And I think it's about 6.8 miles.
Oh, 6.8 miles.
About.
Yeah.
All right, now that's why we have a planner with us in this episode, and we got this byway designation.
Yeah.
Now we're moving forward to creating this management plan. So where are we now with this, Gabby?
Do you want me to back up and kind of share with folks that may not be aware of the State Scenic Byway Program and talk a little bit about that first, or?
Yeah, let's
Okay.
start with that, maybe.
So actually in 2008, the Hawaii Department of Transportation, they developed a statewide scenic byway program basically to recognize, preserve, and enhance locally significant corridors that feature archaeological, cultural, historic, natural, recreational, and scenic qualities. So really, it's a program for roads or corridors that tell a special story about Hawaii. So the State Scenic Byway Program is actually modeled after the national program, and that's run by the Federal Highways Administration. So in Hawaii, since the 2008, when Department of Transportation started this program, they've since then designated 8 scenic byways in Hawaii. So there's 4 on Hawaii Island, 1 on Kauai, and then 3 on Oahu.
Wow, only 8.
Just 8.
And now, with this byway management plan, as we're moving in this process, for those in the community wondering, okay, well, if they were to open up the plan, what does this plan cover?
Yeah, okay. So the management plan consists of 5 chapters. The first chapter is introduction, background information about the State Scenic Byway program. It talks about the purpose and requirements for it, and then it also goes into the management goals. Then the second chapter, really, it's an overview of the corridor. So it talks about the scenic, the natural resources, basically describing the resources that make this corridor special. Then the third chapter is more of an overview of the historical. It's an overview of the historical and cultural aspect of the corridor. So it's a history of the land use and development for that area. And then finally, chapter 4 is really the meat of the plan. So it presents the projects and programs for the corridor, and there's 25 projects that are presented. And that chapter 5 is just plan implementation. So talks about the priority projects, possible funding mechanisms.
Now, 5 chapters with 25 projects, that sounds like almost like a college textbook.
Yep, pretty much.
And we do have some visuals on the screen of markups of what are elements to this plan. And we can also get that on the screen. But I wanted to bring this back to the process of this plan, as there's so much elements. So I was just wondering if you could share, Gabby. I mean, it's just for this process of just creating the first draft, as we are at that stage right now.
Yeah, it's taken a little bit longer than expected. So to back up a little bit and to kind of share how Townscape got involved with the process. Livable Hawaii Kai Hui, they served as the local byway sponsor. And as part of the state designation process, they had to organize a committee of individuals from the community, community organizations, government entities. So there were about 50 or so individuals that were part of this local byway committee, and they were tasked with developing this corridor management plan. And in the beginning of 2016, Livable Hawaii Kai Hui approached Townscape and asked if we can serve as a technical resource and to help them with this process. So starting in the summer of 2016, we started with a series of meetings with the local byway committee folks, and during those meetings we were able to identify what are some of the issues, concerns for the corridor, and start identifying a list of projects that could be implemented for the corridor. And I want to point out something that's really special about the planning process. Something that's really valuable and I think atypical of a planning process. We asked the local byway committee folks to actually draft the preliminary project write-ups. So they did the initial write-ups for the projects. So our role as a technical resource expert was really to compile that information, facilitate discussions among the committee members, and then to really organize and I guess help them prioritize their ideas for the management plan. So what we really did was, help them edit, compile the meat of the plan, the projects, for this plan. So I thought that was really neat. So anyways, back to how we got to where we are now. So end of 2016, we finally put together a preliminary draft of the corridor management plan, and we submitted it to Department of Transportation. And then over the next several months, we went back and forth with them on addressing some of their comments. And then finally in May of 2017, we put together the public review draft plan.
Okay. And now, we did have, this committee process of, stakeholders in our area. And Carol was, is one of our stakeholders. So I wanted to ask Carol, I mean, even though you came from, a background on the Kaiwi Coast Run, but how did you get involved? And, as, Gabby mentioned that, it was really the committee and the stakeholders who helped draft this plan. you know.
Yes, yes. And as she alluded to, we went through rather arduous process of collecting all the stakeholders. So from, government officials, community residents, the commercial entities that are along the byway, the government like DNLR, state, city, and county parks, everyone that was affected by the scenic byway or touched it somehow. So we spent a lot of time, a lot of meetings, a lot of emails, and then Gabby and Townscape was there listening to us, kind of taking notes, keeping track of what we were talking about, and keeping us on track, so that we could then, we would leave a meeting kind of overwhelmed, and they would distill it and say, this is what you talked about, and so are these really your priorities? And then we would get together again. And so we went through that process for, it sounds like over a year, and finally came up with specific projects, a whole list of projects, which we then kind of compared them to our management goals. And that's how we decided what projects would go into the plan and what projects weren't really a priority yet.
Right. Now, we have, a lot of big ideas, with our management goals. But also, just to kind of give our viewers, a little more of an idea, what kind of projects were included or drafted?
There were all sorts of projects came up. We really stuck to projects that would satisfy our goals, which are to protect and preserve the coastline, protect the cultural resources that are there, to provide a safe and enjoyable experience for all of the people that use it, whether it's visitors or local residents, educate the public about the cultural and natural resources there, and to demonstrate and teach stewardship of the area, which is really kind of what we want as the end result. And so based on those criteria, we looked at projects that match those criteria. So one of them, there were some easy that have actually been completed, like there was some things in our view plane, and someone on the committee just happened to be in the right meeting with the right people that said, do those really need to be there, destroying the view plane? And they were removed. It's like, oh, check, success already.
Yeah.
But most of the projects are things that we want to see happen that maybe we don't right now have the resources for. So another example of that is we would really like to have a website that has the map of the area on it. So when you're there, you could go to that website and learn a little bit more about it. And then you learn a little bit of the culture and the history of the area. And you feel a little more connection to that. Even our visitors from out of town, if they can feel that connection, they're more likely to care for the area.
And I think the group also talked about developing an app for it, right? For
Yes,
the Scenic Byway.
that would be really nice.
So a lot of technical ideas that, and, it's great to hear, we got a lot of check marks, but also a lot, in the idea process, but as far as execution and implementation, we haven't reached that stage yet.
No, not yet.
Kind of brings us now, moving forward as we're at the later half of 2017 now, we're kind of going through the public review and comment period. And for Carol, what is, this period for, and, how can the public be a participant?
Yes, so we're really in that time frame where it's a draft right now. We want to go back out to the greater public for comment. And so the plan will be up on the website, which is www.kaiwicoast.org.
And we do have the website on the screen.
Yeah. And so what we encourage everyone to do is to download the plan, read it, and then there will be a form or an email to respond and submit comments and to input, whether it's good or bad, or I'd like to get involved, or I'd like, wish you could change this. That comment period should be open through the first week of December, at which point we'll throw it back at Townscape for consolidation.
Yeah, so after we receive all the comments, so we'll receive them and then we'll review them. And then we'll probably meet with the local byway committee to kind of discuss, how will we address some of these comments? How will we implement it, or how will we incorporate them into the plan? But we'll also have to work with the State Department of Transportation as well before we actually finalize the plan.
All right. And now, for a question for Carol and, Gabby, you may be able to chime in on this. For those viewers, out here, with us, be like, wow, this is such a big process, and, just by sending one comment, does that really make a difference? And why is this important for the greater community, even though we had a group of stakeholders like yourself, Carol, at this initial stage, but why bring in the entire?
It does make a difference. We went through a lot of work to try to involve people, but everybody has these new wonderful ideas. So that's part of what the public comment period is. We think we've tried to cover all our bases and cover everything, but there's might be somebody out there that has something new to add. So we welcome all the comments. I'm not sure what the rest of your question was.
I know it's a long-winded question, but
Yeah, it's never too late to provide comments.
Yeah.
We would appreciate any comments.
Yeah, and it's important because we want this to be a living document. We we are trying to wrap up the draft plan, but I see it as not an end to the plan, but a start to implementing and getting the community involved, and that's why it's important.
I really like the phrase living document, and I wanted to ask Gabby, as you have done many different urban planning and projects related similar to this. How can the public see a living document really foster?
Well, okay, first I want to start by saying a plan is only as good as implementation, right? Otherwise, it's just a beautiful report that sits on the shelf, collects dust. So really, implementation is key. Finding the project champions or the folks that will really carry out the projects, that's really important.
And then, your experience in doing, other similar projects, have you seen, I'm sure you've done many documents, but I'm guessing you have seen some that might have just sat there after the fact. But for communities like here in Maunalua that is proactive and wants to put things into motion, what can that be taken once this final draft gets published next year?
Yeah, funding is always an issue. But what's really great about this community is that there are project champions. There are those that who really do want to see these projects be implemented and work towards that. So,
And I think that's part of what might come out of the public comment period is that there are resources out in the community that we don't know about. And so it might be someone that says, oh, that's easy for me, whereas we were, this was pie in the sky for us. So, that's always a good thing that can come out of the public comment is getting more people involved and finding more resources, in the community.
And now another question for Gabby is, what does make this scenic byway management plan unique and special for the Maunalua community? As I'm sure our community has seen different projects or just different documents over the years. What makes this plan unique?
Well, there are a lot of plans out there. Some are very policy oriented. But what's unique about this plan in particular is it's very project-based. And also it really came from the community, right? We worked with the local byway community folks. They were the ones that really drafted the initial write-ups for the project, so these ideas came from them. We didn't just sit in an office and compile a list of projects to include in the plan. So it really came from the community, and it's action-based.
Action-oriented, action-based, community-oriented, and for Carol, although you have primarily focused with the Kaiwi coastline walk, but do you see even for yourself in your role in that this plan can help affect, changes in the future for the scenic byway, this Kaiwi Coast Run
Oh,
event?
yeah, definitely. And I also see the run and walk as a way to educate. And this is, one of the goals of the corridor management plan. And now we have an audience of people who have expressed an interest in the Kaiwi Coast. And so having a group of people show this interest, come out for the day, it's a wonderful educational opportunity. And I think that will benefit the scenic byway, it'll benefit the community, it'll benefit the run and the walk.
All right. Now, I do have a question for the both of you. Maybe we'll start with Gabby and then Kara. I think sometimes, when people see a living document or a plan, I think there's that concern of, oh my, this might bring radical change, or just even this designation by itself as a byway that might, bring a lot of attention to that area where, it changed the landscape. I mean, for those who may have, feelings or concerns of that, what do you have, what can you share that to help inform, those who may come with these concerns?
Yeah, so as Carol mentioned earlier, so really the purpose of this management plan or corridor management plan is to protect and preserve the resources, to protect and preserve the resources along the corridor, along the Kaiwi Coast. So unlike other scenic byway designations, sometimes they're intended to promote economic development, tourism, but we already know that the tourists are already going to the scenic byway. So really this management plan focuses on protecting and preserving the corridor and the resources.
And for Carol, as you've been, multi-decade, resident of Maunalua. I'm sure you've seen a lot of changes. But how can this, new scenic byway management plan be another step forward into the long-term future?
Yeah, part of what we talked about at some of the meetings is when we say, keep the land in its wild and natural state, protect and preserve, it doesn't mean we're going to keep it, try to go backwards. Progress is progress. And so what we have today with all the people driving that piece of coastline, that is something we have to deal with. And that was part of the plan is, I think one of the projects that came out of it was just, the safety, at some of the entrances and exits of the areas that you pass, Coco Marina Shopping Center, Hanauma Bay, how can that be improved? Not to make it bigger, wider, increase traffic,
right,
but to just be safe for everyone that's there.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're not trying to change anything. We're trying to protect and preserve.
Yeah, and to add on to that, one of the projects is it's educational, right? Installing interpretive signage at the different lookouts,
right,
so that when visitors do go there, they know what they're looking at, what the resources are around the area.
All right, and then we do have 3 more minutes left on this episode, but I wanted to kind of just bring it back, as one way we are sharing and broadcasting about what we're doing and about this public feedback period through Ōlelo. What other ways are you two planning to reach out to the community and members of the public in this feedback process?
Well,
Carol.
we are going to the neighborhood boards. So for Waimanalo, Hawaii Kai, Aina Haina. So that's part
Kailua.
of the Kailua, yes,
Yeah.
Kailua, and I think we're going to reach out to Wailai Kahala as well, if they want to have us. So just to include the whole community. Have it on the website at kaiwicoast.org. Included in the website for the Kaiwi Coast Run, we also have that captive audience of past participants that will know that the plan is out here, out for review.
Mm-hmm.
They might be the exact people that are interested in that public comment opportunity.
Right, and for Gabby, I'm sure that's a lot of comments that could potentially be coming in. Do you, I mean, in the past when you've gone to these stages for other similar type projects, do you see, I guess, similar themes or similar, comments being recorded?
Yeah, we often do see a lot of similar comments, and that's great because then kind of we recognize that, oh, these are common concerns that the community may have.
Mm-hmm. And then with these comments, I think sometimes, you might have one, maybe segment or demographic have one certain view on a particular, area or project, and maybe another, just as many, commenters or members of the public who feels differently about, a certain issue. So how can this plan, reflect just the different, opinions that may be brought up?
Well, we'll definitely be considering all the comments we receive, and then we'll be meeting with the local byway committee to kind of discuss how we will incorporate it into the final plan.
And if you have anything to add, I mean, Carol, I mean, you've kind of been involved with the community insight stage from the start, but I'm sure even within our personal discussions and meetings at the community level, you saw just even a vast array of different opinions or viewpoints.
Yes, and that's always the case. You have different people with different ideas, which is why it's good to have a large committee to review it and determine, which way we need to go, what's going to benefit the community and protect the coastline the best.
Yeah, and I think that's also where we refer back to the management goals, right?
Right.
Making sure that we remember that these are the goals that we set early on.
All right, and looks like we ran out of time, but for just one final reminder and shout out, kaiwicoast.org if you would like to learn more about the Maunalua-Makapuʻu Scenic Byway Management Plan. But once again, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Maunalua Past, Present, and Future. And this is Kendrick Chang with Livable Hawaii Kai Hui. And finally, we do want to thank ŌleloNet Studios at Kaimuki High School for filming this episode. Mahalo. Thank you.